We would like to thank LSR for sponsoring the Let's Be Frank video podcast. LSR produces Southern Cane pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. Southern Cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets. We are kicking off episode number 14 on the Let's Be Frank video podcast. I'm your host, Jason Duhe. Alongside me is Hall of Fame head coach Frank Monica. We got a great show for you tonight as we'll be talking some semifinal games and some recaps in LHSAA football. Talk some LSU, Tulane, Saints football. We're going to have special guests, former player for Frank Monica and current Nicholls Colonel Evan Roussel. And in the Let's Be Frank segment, Coach is going to discuss clock management. So, Coach, semifinal week, how difficult can it be at times at this point in the season for you to make sure your team is focused on the game at hand? Because it's so easy to look ahead. And also when it comes down to getting to a state championship game again for a second year, how much does that add to the equation while staying focused on that semifinal game?
Oh, it's really, really hard. In other words, they have to have that laser focus because they are looking at the bracket. They are looking at the Superdome. They step away. They are thinking about the tickets. They are thinking about their parents and things of that nature. No question about it. But if they can focus on the team and not the Superdome, that would be the most important thing that you can stress on your kids. That, hey, wait a minute, stay in the routine that you're doing. Don't change anything, because sometimes as a coach, you look at an opponent and say, well, they're so good, I have to do this, and you change and you get away from first base. It's very, very important that you do the things that you've been doing, especially a team that's not familiar with you, a team that's not familiar with your offense, your defense, or your intensity. I think we won a lot of ball games because people were not used to us by getting in the playoffs. And, you start the season and you talk playoffs with the kids. You don't talk state championship, but you talk playoffs because you want them to be excited, one, to get there, to motivate them to get there. But two, once you get there, you have to understand that let's get excited. That's what the community wants. Very few people are playing. Like for instance, right now in the River Parishes, you only have two people that are still playing, and that's odd for the River Parish football. You normally at this time of the year in the semifinals have 4 or 5 contenders for the Superdome and stuff like that. So you have to keep that focus and explain to your team, look, there will be a lot of people, nonpartisan fans that will be at this ball game. They just want to see you play. So I mean, that's the motivation in itself, but can't get it too far away from the basics of what you've done to get there.
All right, Coach, and we're going to go ahead and take a look as we dive into some prep talk, take a look at some of the quarterfinal games that got us here, but also some of these massive semifinal matchups. What are you liking this week, Coach?
Well, first of all, I'd like to go down the list with you because you have Central and Neville. And Central and Neville, that's going to be a fine contest. This is the non-select side, and this game will be played on the Saturday for the championship. And because Central has to travel to Neville, being the number 1 seed, but Central is really, really a team that's well coached. They've done a great job all year long. They've won some games they weren't supposed to win. They only have 1 loss. So look for them. I mean, this could be an upset from Neville. I think Neville's a good football team, but I don't think they are what they were in the past. And then you, in that same side, you have Destrehan and Ruston. Ruston really loading up a lot of points. Destrehan can score points too. They have 3 D1 guys. But again, unprecedented. They have to go to North Louisiana 3 weeks in a row. Myself, when we did at St. Charles, we had 2 weeks in a row, but never had to go 3 weeks in a row. That's all because the top seed always has to be the home team. They voted that in, which I really think they need to really think about that and need to tweak that in some kind of way. But Ruston is the number 3 seed, and again, that final game when non-selected is going to be Saturday at 3:30. So some of the primetime games on the non-select side, which I think that's something that people need to revisit. And then coming down in the Division 2. You have Iowa and Franklin. Franklin being the number 1, and they're playing Iowa's the number 5 seed. Really a tough-nosed football program, but Franklin had a great game against Lakeshore last week, 41-40. It was just a shootout, with like the first game was, and I think Franklin got the best of it and scored late to win this football game. Coach Salter from Madrid has done a great job in his second year there, and if they could stay healthy, they'll probably be a team headed for the Superdome. But the surprise team in this bracket, number 18, Cecilia is 18 seed, but Plaquemine number 6 seed. Plaquemine knocked off Cecilia on the way, knocked off North Dakota. They knocked off Lutcher, And now they're facing the Plaquemine team that knocked off Opelousas, who's a defending state champion. They had 27 seniors on that team. So this is a really intriguing matchup. And, Cecilia has to travel to Plaquemine. They had to travel to North DeSoto, and they had to travel to Lutcher. So they've been road warriors, but a real fine football team. We understand their quarterback is really electric, and they got some really good players on that Cecilia team. Coming down to D3, you have Union Parish and St. James. This is a replay of a state championship game last year. But Union Parish barely beat St. James last year. A number 5 seed going to St. James. Coach Spatz has done a great job, and he's always gets his team. They're one of probably the strongest teams in the state, because what Coach Spatz does at Union Parish, who used to be formerly Farmerville, he makes all his football team get into powerlifting, and they're the strongest. Even the little guys, they really swole up, like the kids say. And so this could be a real challenge for St. James. St. James quarterback is really good, and Coach Davis done a phenomenal job of getting them back to the Superdome 2 years in a row, which is hard to do if they're able to make it that far. And then you have Gina and Sterlington, that same side of the bracket. By the way, this game is going to be on a Thursday at 7:00. So that could be an interesting game. And I don't know if I mentioned the other D2 non-select. That's going to be Friday at 7:00. So, but Gina and Sterlington, we predicted that Sterlington would probably be there from that side of the bracket, and it looks like we were right in terms of that. Moving down, another Thursday game, non-select on the 3:30. General Trash in Haynesville, way up the part of Louisiana. So it's number 12 versus number 1. But the Haynesville looks like to be the parent team that's going to end up in the Superdome. And the surprise team coming from the bottom part of the bracket is South Plaquemine. South Plaquemine and Logansport will team up. But Logansport has to make a long trip. That's all the way down to South Plaquemine. That's about a 6-hour ride. You can't get any further from Logansport to South Plaquemine, and almost in Cuba when you get down there. So it's a heck of a team. That team that Coach Lyle Fitt has put on the field this year. They gave Newman a lot of trouble at week 10. So they only have that one loss. So South Plaquemine is a surprise team. And but I think it's going to take a lot to defeat Haynesville and knock them off their throne. They've been there before. On the select side, D1, and we're looking at the Catholic High and Carr. Catholic High had a real close game against Rummel a week ago. They took a trick play actually on the 4th down and 7 to defeat Rummel 14-7, and it's the second year in a row that's happened. And in 5 out of the last 6 years that Catholic High has actually defeated them. And they're there, but they have to travel to number 1 Carr. And I mean, that's hard, tough environment. Carr's got rolling last week. The Carr just have to watch themselves. Sometimes it seems though, early in the year, they were down 20-0 against Holy Cross. The other night, they were down 14-0. And it seemed like to be a slow starting team. Catholic High, I don't know if it has the speed to keep up with Carr, but yet they'll be, they'll have guys in the right position. They have a free safety, Catholic High does. They themselves have 3 big-time commits on that football team. But I don't know if Catholic High has the quarterback. His quarterback's a tough nut, real good little operator. He's not a real big guy, but Carr has a lot of weapons. So it's going to be hard for Catholic High to go in there to pull off a win, even though they're the defending state champion. And that game is going to be played at 12:00 on Saturday. So it's not an ideal slot, which I thought was kind of odd, but it's going to be a Saturday at 12. John Curtis, the number 19 seed, the lowest seed to make it this far. Alexandria, number 2. Alexandria can really score, but the Curtis is the type of team that can slow it down because of the veer offense. The biggest thing for Curtis, if they turn the ball over. They've had that issue all year long. They've won several more games if they just had more ball security, and I think they know that. But Alexandria can score. But I can see Curtis slowing this game down, and they're really good on the defensive side of the ball. And because Alexandria see the veer very often, it'll be the first time this year that they've seen it. So I think that Curtis is going to have a big advantage in this ball game. And also, it could be one of the few times in the last few years that you had somebody that's had a losing record that has gotten this far in the playoffs. And Brother Martin did 2 years ago. Rummel did it last year, and here you have Curtis there this year knocking on the door. Division 2 on the select side on a Friday at 12:00 this championship game. And Madison Prep against Shaw. And the Madison Prep is a team that's come from nowhere. They had a close call against the Struma, which is a surprise because they beat the pants off of Struma in the first outing at their former district opponent. And but it looked like they struggled to beat Struma in this ball game. Maybe because of that, they were looking forward to playing Shaw. Shaw, as we understand, the Parker, that a great running back, was left the game the other day, was hurt. I don't know if he's going to play, but without him, I think Shaw's going to have their hands full because Madison Prep can score. And they have a real good skill, but they also are a little porous on defensive side of the ball. I think both of them are. And also you have Leesville and E.D. White. E.D. White at Leesville coming to E.D. White. E.D. White, the 3 seed. I know they got to be excited down in Thibodaux. Coach Lassane and his team. As you know, we had him on the show earlier. He really liked this ball club. He liked his senior leadership. They're a physical football team. We don't know very much about Leesville being a Southwest Louisiana team, but E.D. White will be really excited to get there and if they do get the Superdome. And again, that slot, as we said, is going to be 12 o'clock on Friday, kind of an odd slot. And, I think there's something that needs to be adjusted. And some of the select teams seem like they're not getting the greatest slot, okay? But when you go to the Superdome, the fans and kids, they don't care. They'll play, but, sometimes you look at them, maybe they're drawing a few more people. Had a different slot. Division III select. Friday at 3:30 is this ball game. This is Bunkie and Dunham. Bunkie beat the number 5 seed, playing number 1 Dunham. Dunham came back from 3 touchdowns last week. They were 20 points down, came back to win the ball game. So that was a great game. They actually lucky to be there. Didn't think that they would win. So, but Bunkie, team from Central Louisiana, they haven't been there many times, so they'll be very interested. The fact that they haven't been in select very long, for a couple of years, so this would be very interesting to see how they do against a fine Dunham team that's been to the Superdome year before last. They were beaten by St. Charles Catholic when they actually had the game, and they lost it in the last minute or so. And but they're a fine program, and Coach Winder will have them ready. I'm sure he's reminded them of that. He's still the number 1 seed. Catholic and UI Beard, the number 7 seed, facing Calvary Baptist. This could be a great game that you probably want to see. I would love to see it myself. Calvary Baptist has been there to defend the state champion. Catholic and UI Beard is the team that really took it to a team that was Newman last week that was decimated with injuries. But they're very, very talented. They only have 1 loss at the beginning of the year. So they're a team that creeped up on people because of that 1 loss. I don't know if they got the notoriety that they should have gotten. Well coached. Coach Desmo that will have him well prepared. Calvary Baptist has a real good running back, a real good lineman that's supposedly committed to Ole Miss. So this could be a great matchup. This is basically, in my mind, could be an example of a state championship game in itself. And but again, that's Friday at 3 o'clock. That's worth watching and going to the Superdome Fridays for those matchups. On the D4, on the D4 select side on Thursday, this is a 12 o'clock game. You have Kentwood versus Vermilion Catholic. Kentwood, a surprise winner over Southern Lab. They've met Southern Lab several times in the past. Southern Lab normally got the best of them, but not this time. Kentwood won in a thriller. They're going to take on Vermilion Catholic. Kentwood's the 12th seed, and the VC is the 1 seed. Very powerful football team. And, everybody talks about the power ranking, but here they are. And also another side, number 2. So you could have a number 1, number 2, just like it's supposed to be. Face one of Ascension Catholic. Ascension Catholic won a thriller against Riverside. Riverside had the ball at the end of the game. Ascension Catholic had the ball with 3 minutes left to go in the game, ran out the clock, and they were able to beat Riverside at their place. So Ascension Catholic is going to take on Ouachita Christian, the number 11 seed. Ouachita Christian is one of those teams that actually, when the select side were playing on their own site, they were one of the teams that they wanted to go back in the Superdome and voted to jump away from that scenario and go to Superdome themselves. So that should be a pretty good matchup. But that's our playoff bracket for this week. A lot of interesting games, and they're going to be a real, I think, a bunch of surprises on Friday night.
As always, when you get to this point in the season, every team is capable of making that run of the state title. We'll see which teams are able to punch their ticket to New Orleans to play in the Superdome for next weekend. And again, it should be another fascinating, exciting weekend of LHSAA football. So let's go ahead and turn our attention to some college football, as not a ton to talk about this week, Coach, but we're going to start out with LSU, who took on Oklahoma, 37-17 ball game. Special teams, Coach, what about that? LSU returning a kickoff for a touchdown, only the third time in the past, I believe it's 40 or 45 years. Again, the last time was 2020, but the time before that, I believe it was 1982. So really sparked this offense, allowed them to kind of sit back, and really impressive game from Nussmeier, who appeared to be injured, went into the locker room, came back and threw much better, really put some balls on the money on some of these passes. A really impressive game for the offense at moments. Still had red zone struggles, still didn't look where they should be, or where maybe the expectation would be, but they dominated the game against Oklahoma despite a choppy first half.
I saw a wide receiver screen, and I texted my friend who was ex-coach, said, "Did you see that? The first one of the year, they're in a wide receiver screen, and to my knowledge, they got that number one out there that can fly. I don't know why that play is not used more by them, and that helps out your percentage. It's what it is, a wide receiver screen or jailbreak screen, whatever you want to call those on the perimeter. Those screens right there, they're like runs to the outside. And what they do, every good offense expands the field vertically and horizontally. Well, that's the horizontal run, in my opinion. And the way Nussmeier can throw that and those guys out there, that gives those guys a chance. You break a couple of tackles, you get a couple of blocks on the perimeter, and you're going to get at least first downs and stuff like that. So I was glad to see that. Nussmeier's a warrior. We said that on this show. I think that, I'm a big fan of him. I hope that he comes back. I think he's got Heisman Trophy numbers already. I know he's thrown a couple of picks, and listen, I don't think that offensive line has been that stout as far as pass pro is concerned. And we talk about the running backs. It looked like the Williams kid came in his own at the end. They got a great tight end, and they got a couple of receivers. They're not bad. They're not great, but they're not bad either. But just a credit to the way the defense played. They played hard, and I was glad for Coach Kelly, because he kind of reinvented themselves. At the end of the year, come up with two nice wins against Vanderbilt, and that's always nice to play at home also. And Nussmeier really showed some grit for coming back like he did, and showed this leadership. And I think the team really rallies around that kind of guy, because the team wants a gunfighter. That's what they want. And I mean, if they see what that guy's going through, say, wait a minute, now you're taking a beating. So I think he kind of set the tempo of the night when he came back, and you got to love it. And I kudos to him. And I know that they talked about that they're going to join the portal and stuff like that, and get real busy and active in it. But I know you got some people come. But we talked about their roster on this show every week, and I've been saying this: they just don't have a roster yet. And I still think they need better players, especially in the D line, because the D line, you look at, you don't even hear their name. You got a couple. Andrew might make a play, but you don't even their names called, and either pass rush or making a tackle. So let's hope and pray to continue it, and see what they do in the bowl game.
Coach, when you talk about bowl games, the perspective on bowl games has kind of been changed. And I'll say this. I've always come from the standpoint of players tell you how valuable these games are by the amount that opt out. Whether we want to agree with it or not, the players are telling you their feelings on it. As a coach, do you almost treat these bowl games as an opportunity to kind of have that spring game that you mentioned, where you are playing an opponent, because you do get those extra games tacked on the end of the season? But for example, LSU already had an offensive lineman say he's declaring. There was another player that opted out. So there's a lot of shifting and pieces and loyalties being changed at the end of the season when you realize there's no shot at a playoff. So do you almost treat this just as, hey, this is an opportunity to play it like a spring game, see what we can do with the pieces that we have, and maybe who we need to move around and put where for next season?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of like a sexy scrimmage, so to speak. You know what I mean? And it's a scrimmage on steroids. I mean, it's a real game, but you can experiment. You can actually play some guys, because you're going to lose some. This happened to LSU a few years ago during the transition before Kelly came in, and all of a sudden you had just a few people that opted not to play, and some of them said they had an injury or something like that, which they faked it, and that sort of thing, and that really hurt the roster. It really hurt the roster of the upcoming year. So, yeah, if you can keep it together and get your main guys to play in it, it becomes an extra bonus for them. And the bowl game's always fun because they give the guys, they give them different things. Like sometimes it's a ring, sometimes it's a different paraphernalia that they get, headphone sets, all kind of little trinkets like that. They have every night is a dinner, entertainment for them. So bowl games are really, really fun, and for teams, it's kind of a reward for them. And if they win the game, it's even better. Some people are going to put more emphasis on it because if they go to a regular bowl game, it's not for a championship that they're playing for. It'll have a little bit different appeal than it does for the championship games.
Well, Coach, how much more valuable is our bowl games for programs at smaller schools that you're not always on ESPN? You're not always, and these games are played all throughout the holiday season, so a lot of people are off. A lot of people have their full attention. There's one game on that day. So you're going to watch these smaller schools. How much bigger is this an opportunity for these smaller schools to put their name on the map for some of these recruits out there who, of course, all of them have their eyes and attention on the big power programs. But how big is it for those guys to get the attention that they feel like they need?
Well, coaches can use that for recruiting. I mean, they're going to the kids' home and say, "Hey, listen, we went to the bowl so many years in a row. We're going to this bowl. When you go to this bowl, sometimes you're going to get TV. You're going to get TV money, and sometimes you're going to get exposure. They can really use that. Whether if you want to be a pro player, you get a chance to be on TV, stuff like that. So it can be used for a lot of motivation as far as the off season is concerned. And then during the off season, you can say, "Hey, we've been to bowl, but we want to get a bigger one next year." So I think the first is to be bowl eligible. That's what the coaches talk about. Get your 6 wins so you'll become bowl eligible, and we'll figure it out after that, and just keep going, building off of that, and hopefully at the end of the year have a ranking. So if you get a top 25 ranking, you can recruit to that and say, okay, we're in the top 25. We get a couple more players. We can maybe get in the top 10. So I think you're right. I mean, you have a lot of advantages to go into a bowl, and the smaller schools that know they won't play in a college playoff. That's their big motivation. That's their big goal that they put in the locker room at the beginning of the year.
All right, Coach, let's go ahead and turn our attention to Tulane, who unfortunately this weekend dropped their game against Memphis 33-28. We discussed how that's kind of been a difficult game for Tulane for years. And Memphis took advantage of some opportunities, some untimely turnovers by Tulane, and they took advantage and won the game. Although, as we talked about, Tulane will still play in the conference championship game. However, that opportunity at a playoff is all but diminished after the loss.
Yeah, and now that not only did they lose the ball game, but they lost the opportunity maybe to be in that playoff bracket, the top 12, and they also lost the opportunity to play at home. And had they won that ball game, they'd have played at home for this conference championship. They'd had a lot of momentum. They had a lot to play for. But, it doesn't matter. I've seen teams play in the World Series that came in flat. I've seen teams play in the Superdome that came in flat. And because of whatever the reason, after the Tulane Navy experience, they played as good as they could play against Navy. They shut out a team at Navy, and they came home, but they weren't the same team. Every third down, I can recall Memphis converted every third down, whether it's a hitch, a slant, whether it's an option route out of the backfield. I mean, it was kind of comical at the end. So it was third down. They're going to make it. And Memphis quarterback was really excellent. The running back was really good. But you can tell that Tulane was not the same Tulane that played at the beginning of the year. And I know that Coach Summerall actually said, he tried to get them and try to motivate them and then not look ahead at Army and the whole deal, but he just couldn't get them over the hump now. And in that ball game, they had 2 crucial completions that turned to be fumbles, 2 big plays. I mean, it was kind of ironic that they happened in a ball game that really changed the momentum of the whole game. And there were 2 long pass plays, and the guy catches it and he fumbles, or he stripped of the ball, and they both were reviewed. And one of them could have easily been declared down, but it was not. They didn't get a break there in the call. But really, Memphis played better than they did that night. And I think that the running back, the quarterback for Massa, for Tulane, he has to run the ball a little bit more. And sometimes, not design run, but when the pocket breaks down, he needs, I think, get out of dodge and go pick up a first down. He didn't have his best ball game, but the whole team was a little bit sluggish that night. Hopefully, he can get it back. When they go to West Point, it's a real nice little stadium. I've been there before in their press box, and the press box didn't have any windows. I was talking to somebody, and it was raining, and all our papers got wet in the press box. But it's an intimidating little stadium to play in. and it's right outside of New York City itself. And so all the pageantry that they're going to have up there, and it's going to be something that they're going to have to withstand. The only advantage they have is that Tulane should be well rested because they played on a Thursday. Army is playing 3 games in like 18 days. So that's a big difference. Less than that, I think it's 16 days. But so Tulane has the advantage as far as rest is concerned.
And Coach, when you look at this team again, still a lot to play for, a bigger bowl opportunity, and whether they win the conference or not, this is their 3rd straight trip. And we've talked time and time again about how far this program has come. Under a new head coach, Coach Summerall's done a fantastic job picking up where Coach Fritz left off, and that speaks to how far this program has come just in the past 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, no question. I mean, as one Tulane alumni said, he kind of sent out an email. He said, we're spoiled. Here we got 10 wins. He said, we'd have given anything in the past to get 10 wins. He said, we can't be too disappointed about this season. Coach Summerall's done a great job. And listen, in transition, that's hard because you got a lot of players that love Coach Fritz, and a lot of players and his staff that he had, and Coach had to come in and rebuild that staff that he had and get the confidence of the players. That's a hard transition. So he came in, and it ended up being very, very seamless. So it's a credit to Coach Summerall. His personality exudes confidence. He's a tough coach, and I think the players really take to his personality. And I'm just hoping he can stay around for a long time because his name is being bounced around a lot.
All right, so let's go ahead and transition to some Saints football, where the Saints dropped their game to the Rams this past weekend, 21-14. We've kind of talked about how in this transition you might see some ups and downs. Not shocking that the Saints did lose another game along the way. But what do you like to see from them moving forward?
Well, I think that this is a big game against New York because New York's not having a great year. I think if Coach Rienzi wants to maintain this job as being the head coach, if he wins this one, I think it's going to really help him on the path. If he loses this one, they're going to say, well, it's the same old thing. And I think, the media is going to jump all over. I'd love to see him get the job and keep the job. I talked about that on the show last week. I think they were close the other day. Just a couple of things. I don't understand. They're on the 15-yard line, first down, and they ran 3 running plays in a row. They really didn't split. They didn't have big plays. Even though Kamara had 100 yards in the game, they didn't split them on any big runs. I don't know why they were thinking 3 runs in a row. They're going to get in the end zone with that. And they waited to 4th down to finally throw a pass. And the car said that it's odd to me because normally the route that they ran was a simple route, but they were expecting man, and they had a man beater in it. But and all of a sudden, LA went to a zone. Well, they didn't have a zone concept in there. I thought that was odd. One, I thought it was really odd that they put everything on that 4th down call, and I think Coach said they were going to go for 2 had they scored right there. But that was just one thing. Groupie very, very reliable. He missed a field goal early in that ball game. But the Rams, with Stafford, he's been an All-Pro quarterback for a long time. Their two receivers are class. But you got to like with the fact that they competed right there. But the defensive line for the Saints is just not there. I mean, when you see an NFL team just run right through them, and it's been like that all year. They run right through the middle of the line. And forget about the pass rush. You got to stop that run first. It just hasn't been there. And they were disappointed in there. So I can see that during the offseason with a bunch of draft picks, they're really going to build that D line.
All right, Coach, and that'll do it for our first segment. When we come back in segment number 2, we're going to have special guest Evan Roussel of the Nicholls State Colonels, and we'll get a chance to talk with him. So don't touch that dial. You're watching on Varsity Sports Now.
We would like to thank the Accardo Law Firm for being a supporter of the Let's Be Frank video podcast.
Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern Cane pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana's sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern Cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen.
Go ahead and welcome our special guest. Played football at St. Charles Catholic for head coach Frank Monaco. During his time, gained all-state honors as well as an offensive MVP for his district. Only allowed 2 sacks during one season during his career. While at Nicholls, 4-time all-conference player. Also racked up numerous All-American awards. Want to welcome in our special guest, Evan Roussel. Evan, thank you so much for joining us. And obviously, you played for Coach Monaco. You know the type of person he is, and that's why you're here tonight. But you've been very successful in your time at Nicholls. What about Coach Monaco's style and the way that he coached do you think allowed you to transition to be so successful so early in your career at Nicholls?
Be nice, Evan. Be nice, man. No curse words.
Yeah, for sure, Coach. I just want to say thank y'all for having me. It's truly an honor. And how much you guys do for the River Parish and everything. But Coach always demanded perfection, right? So, you couldn't get too high, you couldn't get too low. You had to stay consistent, and that carried me through my whole career. And I thought that's one thing that Coach taught me early. You got to stay consistent, and that's what I try to model. And discipline, obviously, big discipline, and that carried me through my whole career.
Let me say this, Evan. A lot of people don't know this. You are an all-district MVP in our district, in the real tough district at the time. Not only as an offensive lineman, I mean, not many people ever get offensive lineman MVP, and you also made the all-state team. And I mean, that's really, really rare. What people don't realize that you were excellent first baseman, and I think you were a left-handed hitter, or a power hitter.
Right.
And COVID kind of wiped out your senior year. And I was anxious to see you because I know you started the season. You had a couple of dingers already, and we were kind of anxious. But COVID caught you that year because you were a really good first baseman. You came from a family of athletes. I mean, your dad played for me at Lutcher, played at LSU. He actually coached for me. And Terry was an excellent defensive line coach. He brought intensity to the game, just like you did. And your grandmother, oh my God, she was staying. She used to wear me out at baseball games. Coach, what are you doing?
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah. Oh, she'd love to have seen you play at Nicholls State, and naturally you come from a great family. Your mom just grew up right next door to us. We actually grew up in a duplex when Nancy and I first got married, and your mom was right next door to us. She was a little bitty thing at the time.
Yeah.
So we go back. We have a lot of connection. And but Evan, you played in college ball. Exactly. A lot of people don't know this exactly what you guys go through in college ball. But what is exactly some of the things that you can remember that was really, really tough, and the adjustment that you had to make from high school to college?
Yeah, I thought the game is more technical. It gets more technical, especially in the offensive line. As much as a technical game it is, that was one thing. You have to slow the game down a little bit for yourself. You can't be too out of whack. You got to be patient. That's all aspects of the game. More film study. Defenses disguise a lot more. Safety blitz, safety rotation. You got to look for all that stuff when in college. And coaches get paid. Defensive coordinators get paid too, right? So they disguise a lot of things. Everybody's good now, like sometimes in high school you get to go against a guy maybe that's not as talented or whatever, but everybody's good, so you have to be consistent. And then off-season training is a whole different animal, I can remember all the springs waking up at 5 a.m, freezing cold, early February. You know, you got to go run mat drills, you know, things like that. Everything's more kind of faster, amped up, you know. But Coach, I tell you this, you did a good job of getting us ready for the next level. You know, the way you ran your program, you know, really carried us a long way. You know, I bet everybody who played college ball for you, from St. Charles or whatever you coach, you know, they were prepared to go to the next level. So
well, thank you for that. Yeah, but you were tackle your whole life. In fact, I remember for us anyway, it was no secret. You didn't need a computer to figure out our tendency. We were running behind you. I mean, well, that's why the ball was on you were left tackle. We ran left, and the ball stayed on the left hash, going all the way down the field. And somebody said, "What's wrong with your right?" I said, "You ever seen my right tackle?" I said, "We're not running that way." So, but you know, the transition from tackle, as you just said, now people don't realize the center actually has to identify the apex, has to identify for protection reasons. A lot of people don't understand that on the college level. But also the difference is now that you move to a center and you were all conference for 4 consecutive, that's a phenomenal feat that you can accomplish there. And especially at your size, because you're not 6'5". I wish you were. You're not 6'4". But tell me the difference in pass protection technique that you had to learn as a center compared to a tackle.
Yeah, so you know, I think it's harder at tackle, you know, in the college level because you got those athletes and everything you got to go against. But mentally, it takes everything at center, you know. So you telling everybody else what to do before you even know what to do, and then you have to react after that, right? So, you know, the pass setting is more, you know, when you go down with a 4 down front and whatever, is you get a little bit more help. But you know, when it's 3 down, you 1-on-1 snapping the ball and pass blocking. You know that could get tricky, especially against a quick nose if you're by yourself, right? It's not as much setback, but I like to be aggressive when I'm pass setting at center. You know, I like to get on people quick. It eliminates time and space, especially when you have one hand, basically. So, you know, that offhand takes a lot. You know, feet, you got to have pretty decent feet, you know, in the middle when you're by yourself 1-on-1. So, you know, it just takes all that. You know, you got to use tools in a tool belt. You know, you gotta. It ain't just sit back and react, right? You gotta have a plan before it happens, and you know, I think that's where some people mess up at center, right? They just try to sit back instead of having a plan. You know, in all offensive line, you have to have a plan.
Amen. Evident that people don't realize how smart you were. You just had that. You had that it factor as an offense. So you were so smart and intelligent. The game slowed you down. We even used you in defense sometimes, especially on goal line. But I remember one particular game. You came to me in the middle of the game, said, "Coach, run the throwback screen." And I said, "What?" They said, "Run the throw." And sure enough, you ran. And I don't know, it worked.
That was at Lester. I think we scored on that, Coach.
I think we did. And I said, from now on, you're going to call all the plays. Like this. But, you know, you played for an excellent offensive line coach who's happened to be your uncle and recruited you, Coach Lee Roussel. He recruited you, and he asked me a million times, he said, "Coach," he said, "how's it going to look? How's it going to look if I take this guy?" Because in my family, I said, "Don't worry about that. You know he's a good football player. You recruited good football players that were maybe a little undersized already, and sure enough, you proved him right, and you proved him to be an excellent recruiter like he was, and he taught you the right way." And you know, Coach Rebar, I heard that he's actually retiring after a number of years. But you were very fortunate to play for guys that really, really knew the game. And Coach Roussel was one of the best offensive line coaches around. I mean, he studied the game. But let's jump ahead on you, Evan, with a little bit of what kind of future you think that you might want to try to play in the league one day?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been my dream. You know, I'm patient. You know, seeing where the cards fall. You know, but I'm also realistic with myself. You know, but you know, that would be a dream of mine. So you know, I'm just staying patient and seeing what happens. If I get any interest or whatever, you know.
No, we're pulling for you. Listen, I'd love to be your agent. Listen, I'll be your agent. I'll give you 10%. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I owe you a lot, Coach.
But you know that along those lines, what do you see is going to happen? Here you are. You're leaving college, and you got your degree, but possibly working on your master's. What do you think? What do you see happening with this transfer portal and NIL from a player's perspective?
You know, it's kind of hard to say where it's going because it's elevated so much. You know how quickly it happened, but you know, my thing with it is guys they don't really fight for the spot anymore, right? You get the highest bidder, or you don't like how things are going, so you just take the quickest out, And if you was a big time recruit and you say you didn't even play a year, you could go somewhere else and get paid however much money you want, right? So kids, it's got to have more competitiveness to it, right? There's not enough. I see it going down as like kids aren't going to want to compete anymore, right? It's just who's the highest bidder. That's where I'm going to go. So, I really don't know where it's going to go just because of how much it's changed already, over the past however many years it's been. I really don't have an answer for you, Coach, but I know kids, I'm blessed to say I stayed 5 years at the same spot, right? I hope guys continue to do that, but you don't really see that too often, especially these big time schools, right?
Amen. And we've always said that nobody's a proponent of that. What's going to go on? It's not college football as we know. It's actually free agency.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You said it right. I mean, I couldn't coach because you're getting a guy's face right now, and all of a sudden if you're getting the guy and you chew him out, well, the next day he's gone.
He's gone. Yeah.
And Evan, I don't know if you know it, but in January they're going to vote on that in high school. A one-time transfer, just one time. But
wow.
They're going to vote on that, and the coaches I'm talking to, they said they don't think it has a chance to pass. But the fact that it's on the agenda, kind of scary because it doesn't take much to do that. Evan, we talked a little bit the game of football in terms of blocking. They had zone schemes and gap down schemes. What do you prefer to do the best? Was the zone scheme or you thought the gap schemes were better, or a combination?
So I love zone schemes when I got to college. It gives you more a chance to be patient and be physical at the same time, right? The back can make you right. If you go on a down block and you miss automatically, then penetration is going to kill the play, right? So the back can make you right in a lot of times in zone. But I always love getting on a double team in zone, shuffle overlapping and driving that thing vertical to the linebacker. It just demoralizes people, but because most of the time as a center, power plays, I'm just blocking back, right? And I'm not really as much movement on those big nose guards. So, I like to get hip to hip and drive it vertical, right? So,
what do you think was the toughest thing that you do? Or what is the best moment that you've had, either as a player, either on the field or off the field, as a college player?
Coach, I'd have to say Colin Baton Rouge played in Tiger Stadium in the fourth quarter, and it's kind of your dream as a kid in Louisiana, to play in LSU, and that song came on, man. The emotions started kicking, right? It was kind of surreal to me, especially that my dad played there, so it kind of hit home.
Yeah, that was exciting because you guys actually played well for a half and had LSU actually reeling, especially on offense with the Guggenheim, rushing all those yards. So that had to be an exciting night for you, especially your senior year. And you even told me going into that ball game that you felt like y'all could move the ball on the ground against them.
Correct. Yeah, we watched USC's film. And, they ran a lot of counter and, hit them a couple times, hit them a lot in the run game, big plays, I think that's kind of been their plague all year is big plays in the run game.
Right.
Guys out of gaps, whatever. And I find that up front they wasn't as talented as usual, So, we thought going into the game we were going to run the ball and see where the cards fall. And, I think we ran for almost 200, if I'm not mistaken, like at least, I think 150 at least. So yeah, we had a game plan going in, and you had to play hard, right? Everybody wanted to play there, growing up. So I think we wanted it more, but I think they just kind of out-athleted us at the end, right? But yeah, that was the plan.
No question. Evan, what's your vitals right now? You're about six what? Six?
About 6 foot right now, 285, 6'2" on paper, though.
That's okay. That's so you play bigger than that. And last and not least, Evan, before we talk about Miss Melissa's gonna bring me some good dessert or something, But, but last but not least, I mean, if football is not in your future, what are you thinking about doing for your future, and what is your major right now?
So I graduated in psychology with a minor in business management, and I think I'm going to pursue my master's in business, my MBA. I'm kind of looking into sales or maybe finance or whatever. So, we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to finishing my master's sometime soon in the next couple of years. Probably gonna get me a little job. Give me some coin, like you said.
Yeah, man, you need that. Make sure that you save your money. Well, if you're going to be a financial planner, which I think is a great idea, if things don't work out for you. But Evan, listen, you had a great future. You got a great past. You've done a lot of things in high school. There's not much more you could have accomplished in high school and in college from the position that you played. You had the greatest respect among your teammates, because just to play in this league for 5 years, you ought to be committed. Not many people can actually say that nowadays, And you're right. I remember those January, February mornings. They were just brutal, and nobody liked to get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock and see your own breath, and stuff like that. And then have the coaches yelling at you, do it again. That's not fast enough, the whole deal. So I bring back a lot of memories. So I know exactly what you went through. And plus, people don't see that side of football. They only see the Saturday night and think that you don't practice all week long. But listen, buddy, thank you so much for doing this. And listen, maybe I'll see you at the racetrack with your uncles one day and your dad. We're gonna need a financial planner if we keep doing that. But Evan, please tell Mom and Dad hello, and thanks for coming on and being a good sport about this. And okay,
I appreciate you, Coach.
And remember, when you do make some money, I will be available Monday through Friday. Okay.
All right, yeah, I got you.
All right, buddy.
Appreciate
you. Take care.
We would like to thank Gulf Coastal Sponsors for being a sponsor of the Let's Be Frank video podcast.
Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern Cane pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana's sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern Cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Roussel supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen.
We would like to thank Riverlands Insurance for sponsoring the Let's Be Frank video podcast.
Welcome back to segment number 3 of the Let's Be Frank video podcast. Jason Duhe, alongside me is Frank Monica. Tonight in the Let's Be Frank segment, Coach, tonight you're going to talk about clock management.
Yeah, guys, I'm sitting there watching football the entire weekend, and number one that popped up, and I said, we got to talk a little bit about this particular situation. Here's Clemson playing against South Carolina, and Clemson's already in field goal range, and there are 16 seconds left in the ball game, and they were already in field goal range, and all of a sudden the quarterback rolls out. I thought sure that they're just going to line up the ball. They were just going to line up the ball and kick the field goal to tie it and go to overtime with it. They're playing at home, so all the things indicated that they had advantage there just to line up the field goal and kick and tie the ball game. But the quarterback, who's a experienced guy, he rolls out, throws a short pass, the ball bounces up, and South Carolina picks it off. And I said, I didn't understand what they were thinking. I said, why didn't they just line it up, kick the field goal, and tie the thing up? They felt like In fact, the pass was like a 3-yard pass. It would not made a big difference. Then even prior to that, we eating Thanksgiving dinner, and we're watching this Chicago Bear game. Chicago Bears themselves, here they are in field goal range. 30 seconds left to go in the ball game. Again, they had the tying field goal in range to kick. 30 and they had a timeout left. And so they let the clock run down. All of a sudden, they're getting everybody lined up, and all of a sudden they drop back to pass with 9 seconds left. They throw a deep ball, and the ball is incomplete, and the clock runs out. And they took a timeout. They took a timeout into the locker room. Never got a chance to kick the field goal. I said, "This is pro." Well, needless to say, the next day the head coach gets fired. And I mean, maybe that would have happened anyway. But I mean, there was so much controversy about why he didn't take a timeout right there to just kick the field goal, or why did he spend 30 seconds to run a play? I mean, it took forever. It was the worst clock management I've ever seen. It looked like they didn't understand it. So, my point is, as coaching staff, prior to the ball game, you talk about what you do with clock management. You talk about what happens within the 2 minutes. One of the things you talk about, and it's not a 2-point chart we're talking about. Everybody has the 2-point charts, and sometimes you violate that. You just go by your gut. I'm not talking about that. But you don't want to sit down and say, okay, with 2 minutes left to go in the game, or with 4 minutes left to go in the game, I have no timeouts. What do I do if I have no timeouts? Because the 2-minute drill, you normally take 15 seconds per play. That's the average that you take in a 2-minute drill. But if I have one timeout, okay, can I take a knee here, or can I take a 2 knees, or can I take a knee at all? There's a thing called a slow knee or a quick knee. Quick knee means that the game's just about over. I take a knee here to get out of dodge. A slow knee means I'm going to drop back. I'm going to let the rush come, and I'm going to try to kill a couple more seconds on the clock. Everything is discussed, though, and normally the head coach, in the heat of the battle, and you see this, remember the 40-second clock is running down. You don't want to get a delay of game because that's even more embarrassing. So you normally discuss all these things prior to a ball game. And normally the guy up in the booth, or maybe 2 people, one on each side of the ball, would tell the head coach, "Coach, be alert for this now. We need to take a knee right here, or we can't." And somebody is always educating the coach and the coaches down on the field about what to do in that particular situation. It's not, you don't fly by the seat of your pants. This is all organized before you get there. Coaches have big meetings. They have a lot of meetings, because you only are required you can only practice so much. But there are a lot of meeting time that they hang around in the offensive room, and they do this. Like, for instance, okay, you should not take a timeout. The rule of thumb, for me anyway, not to take a timeout before 6 minutes to go in the half. If you are taking that, Ryan Day against Ohio State the other day against Michigan, he took 2 timeouts in a row. Well, all of a sudden, because there was a miscommunication, it might be personnel, and things get chaotic on the sideline. So that's it. I mean, it's no coach's fault, but it's that intention of the game with a 40-second clock that they have to get the play off, and that's why you don't want to waste a play or create a bad situation by running a bad play against maybe a defense that you couldn't block. So that's really big. So timeouts, you don't want to carry them in the locker room. You get 3 per half. But I think all of this, my biggest point is that all of this has to be organized before the ball game even starts, even maybe at halftime. And sometimes in between timeouts, and you tell the quarterbacks that, listen, okay, you got to stay in bounds, or you got to get out of bounds. The 4-minute offense, you tell the people, stay in bounds. You want the clock to run if you have the lead, and force them to take the timeout. Or if you don't have the lead, it's like a 2-minute offense. Make sure you go out of bounds. I lost a ball game 1 year at St. Charles. 3 different players stayed in bounds in a 2-minute offense. And every Wednesday, that's what we left the field with a 2-minute offense, and this was covered. It was always covered about what stops the clock. You have to go over with your team what stops the clock, what penalty stops the clock, running out of bounds, incompleted pass, what stops the clock, what continues the clock to run. Your players need to know that like the back of their hand. But I had 3 different players in a ball game, and it cost the ball game in a 2-minute drill. Time ran out because they tried to get an extra yard or 2. If they just stepped out of bounds, it stops the clock, saves you a timeout. So all of these things, again, the biggest thing I'm trying to say is that you have to be prepared for it, the quarterbacks have to be the smartest guy on the field. He has to instruct the huddle exactly what's going on. And now with the communication with the helmet deal, there should be no reason why you should have bad clock management.
You know, Coach, one thing I've noticed over the years, and it did happen with Les Miles during his time against Ole Miss. The team was, I'm sorry, it was actually Auburn. It was poor clock management. His team lost the game. He was fired. I believe it was the next day. Not the first time, not the last time. I find a lot of times we see these coaches be dismissed, as you mentioned, Chicago's coach, being dismissed or fired from their job. In particular, not so much even after blowouts, but in these close clock management type situations. And to your point, you talked about the level of preparation that needs to go into clock management. And I've kind of thought this for years, but I want your opinion as a coach, as somebody who's been around the game a lot longer than me. Is it a fair assessment to determine maybe underlying cracks in a program based off the way a coach is handling clock management time in and time out over the course of a game or even the course of a season?
Jason, if it happens one time, you have to excuse him, give him the benefit of the doubt, because there's some circumstances. It might be I've had a situation where we had a kid that was hurt. Well, nobody told us that he was hurt. he was supposed to be on the field, and nobody's told us that. So all of a sudden, you get a delay a game penalty because you don't have enough players on the field, and you're trying to get the right personnel out there. And so there could be a lot of circumstance, but yet when it's so visible and something that's so obvious, and even the fans, the Golden Girls can tell you, hey, wait a minute, they need a timeout right now or something like that. Those evidence, and you're sitting there, what are you doing? Again, that go back to that Chicago game the other day. They still was never explained exactly what he was thinking in terms of why didn't take a timeout and use that timeout and kick the field goal. More importantly, they let 30 seconds off the clock run off. That's something that could be a personnel thing, and guys can't get lined up, the whole deal. And it always happened that in that 2 minutes and before the half and at the end of the ball game. So those things need to be covered and practiced daily and be pounded in their head. But even though, you can see a high school kid doing that, but man, when you see pro teams doing that, it really makes you wonder.
All right, Coach, thanks for the insight. As we move on to the next segment, Blitz the Ball, Coach. Coach, tonight you're going to answer the question, what is robber coverage?
I've heard some commentators use the term, and I said, I love these commentators that throw out things, and I said, how in the world they know that? Robber coverage has not been around a long, long time, but what exactly is it? Well, robber coverage is normally it's a guy that stands kind of in the middle of the field. Now, it has to match up the front naturally, and it's the guy it's disguised as something else. It looks like a regular cover 3 coverage, or it could be cover 2 coverage. And it's a guy, but it's really designed to take away in the middle of the field, especially if you have a good tight end. And the first time I've ever seen it, we were playing Air Force when I was at Tulane. We were playing Air Force really early in my career, and we had a great tight end by the name of Rodney Holmes. In fact, he was an All-American tight end, and he was from Ypsilanti, Michigan. And they did this to take him away, and we had not seen it before. And it took us a while for us to figure out, what are they doing there, and I'll just kind of show you briefly on this my little drawing here. So excuse my little drawing. So I like to do this and do it a little bit. If you notice it looks like a cover 3. This dotted line that I have right here on this guy right here, this dotted line means that there's the tight end right there. Okay, so now there's the tight end, and you can see that robber. You see what I said, the R right there. That's in for robber. He was in the free safety position, so he comes up at the snap of the ball. These two hash defenders actually respond for the hash, but as soon as the ball is snapped, it looks like cover 3. But as soon as that ball is snapped, he moves up, and these two hash defenders move off the hash. And it kind of looks like a cover 2 look, but it's really 3. Now, if the tight end goes vertical, he jumps in. But if the tight end goes to the flat, he just backs up. So it's a really, really unique cover. More importantly, it's very, very effective against the run game because nobody can get to that guy. He's normally at a 7-yard depth, 8-yard depth, and he can go sideline to sideline, especially if he's a real good football player. And it's just a hard coverage to decipher if you do a good job. Now, it's a little elaborate. And you just can't do it any sloppy. You must have somebody there that's pretty smart, and the scheme itself and the whole team has to understand their roles. And you can do it a lot of different ways, but that's basically what robber coverage consists of. It's a guy he could rob a tight end, He can rob a back coming out of the backfield. He can do a lot of things. He can spy the quarterback. He can look for the screens. He can look for draws. So it has a lot of capabilities here. And that guy can make a lot of plays, especially if he likes to hit. So that's basically a rough description of Robert coverage, and you can do it different ways now. So this is the basic way people use it.
All right, Coach, thank you. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at our next segment, which is At the Water Cooler. And, Coach, after a myriad of issues, I'll say, I think you raised a very valid question to answer. Do we need to shake hands after a game?
Well, for years, Jason, way back when I started coaching, I started this in high school. The fact that I had to pray with the players in the middle of the field, and I used to invite the parents to come down with them. And I thought it was a great thing, especially if you wanted. We had the parents hold hands and we say prayers, and I think some teams continue to do this. But what I've seen lately, and I've been part of this too. Sometimes you have to watch this. I know at St. Charles Catholic do a real nice job of this now. What they do is that they wait till both teams finish shaking hands, and then they'll open the gates and let the parents come on the field, which I think is a great thing to do. But do you really need to shake hands even with the players and the coaches? If you look in the college level, you look on the pro level, when those two coaches approach one another, they shake their hands and they say, "Hey, good game," boom, and that's it. I mean, is that worth all the other stuff that can take place? Look what happened this weekend. Very, very discouraging to see Ohio State and Michigan. Michigan with the flag and the whole deal. Very discouraging to see fights break out after the ball game, especially in big rivalry games like that, the intensity level. You saw it happen in North Carolina State game over the weekend. You saw an incident with Alabama and Auburn on the sideline. I mean, that was not after the ball game, but things after the ball game. So why even put yourself to it? But how do you correct it? Well, one thing you probably can do is say, all right, the visiting team must leave the field right after, and do that ahead of time. Or you tell the two coaches, hey, we're not going to shake hands, we're friends. We're going to talk anyway. I mean, most coaches know one another. They talk one another. They go to clinics. They go to different things, and they see one another all the time. It's not like they're strangers. And I know you want to promote sportsmanship for the younger kids, but what is worse, to them leave the field or just to see what happened on Saturday in those ball games? I just think that's something that we need to do. We need to talk about it, throw out more fines or whatever it is. The media has to really press it. I think the PA announcer is now prior to the ball game, and they always do. Please remain in your seat after the ball game. Well, they win a big ball game. What happens? All the fans on the field. I mean, that is dangerous in itself, especially in a close ball game. It doesn't take much for those fans. All of a sudden, you got all those players still on the field, and I think that's a dangerous situation. So I don't know what's going to be done to rectify it, but I really think the first thing to do is say, hey, okay, visiting team, you head for the locker room. You get out of there, win or lose. Get out of there right now, and because all this celebration now, I mean, it's like show business. It's like even an interception, a fumble. It's like show business on the field. I mean, where's what? I don't see the sport. We're not humble anymore in this sport. We kind of make it like it's some kind of a game show, or kind of look like what is that? America's Got Talent or whatever it is. So I think that really need to put some regulations on this. And I think the best thing to do is not to shake hands after a ball game. And I really believe that, because I saw one time we were shaking hands at the ball game, and one of my own parents went up to one of the better players on the other team, and he told the guy something. He had no business doing that. I was so mad at this particular parent. And I threatened to not do that anymore, not even have the prayer after the ball game, because it doesn't take much. Here's a guy, he gets beat. He's an intense player. What would happen if this guy all of a sudden starts to fight with his fan, and then all of a sudden it makes everybody look bad? So again, there needs to be a lot of regulation and a lot of talk about how to handle these situations after the ball game. And I think the best thing to do is for the teams to leave the field as fast as possible.
Yeah, Coach, I'm going to kind of switch gears because you brought up a really good point about the fans rushing the field. I don't know about you, but I feel like that's been a lot more prevalent in recent years than I've ever seen. LSU beats an Ole Miss team, which is a quality ball club, I'll admit, but I watched LSU in 2003 beat a much better Georgia team in one of the biggest games in the history of the program, whether people understand it present day or not, during a 2:30 kickoff game on CBS, and there was no rushing of the field.
No.
And now it seems like there's just. Do you have any reason why you think that is? It's become so much more commonplace in recent years, and I don't understand it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you get 3-win teams, 3 lost teams, and Syracuse did it the other day. Against Miami. Miami was a 1-loss team. It was not the national championship. Syracuse is not going to be in that playoff bracket. But just different things are sparking these things. Not only just rushing a few things, but these college students. I mean, and they don't go to all the ball games. They go to a big ball game, something like that. I mean, and that's what I don't understand either. And they don't mind if they get fined with it. They're not getting money out of their pocket. The only thing that has to happen, somebody even mentioned this, is that what they should do if the students rush the field, kind of take it up their tuition, up their tuition, or take away some of their scholarship or whatever they're doing. But I mean, it's not on the fans. It's a lot of guys that not even LSU students, for instance, are not even doing it. One thing I did mention, I don't know if you saw it, Iowa and Nebraska is playing in Nebraska. The Nebraska captain before the ball game won't shake hands. And Iowa guys just stand there, they won't shake hands. I said, what's going on in America when that happens? I mean, what are they saying in the locker room that promote that kind of hate? You know what I mean? It's competition. You understand that. But after the game is over with, you need to shake hands and move on. But in this particular case, if they can't act like that, the bottom line is let's not shake hands at all. Let's both teams leave the field. And if both teams leave the field immediately, then maybe the fans won't. There's nobody for them to celebrate with. But I think that needs to be. But is that going to stop them? I don't think it's going to stop the fans from jumping on the field in a big ball game. But why, as you said in the Ole Miss game? I mean, act like you've been there before. You win a ball game. Act like you've done this. You're a champion. It's kind of like in baseball now. A guy gets a double. He gets on second base. He starts celebrating. In college, a guy gets a big base hit. Nobody's humble. Nobody's humble anymore. The Mickey Mantles and the Babe Ruth and the Hank Aaron, they didn't do that. You know what I mean? I've done it before. I don't need to jump up and down like an idiot, like I've never gotten hit before. So anyway, I don't know if they're ever going to solve the case of fans rushing the field, no matter what the fines are.
Yeah, I'm with you. But again, it's odd that it's become so much more, especially recent years. I've seen it. It seems like every week a team is rushing the field, and it's always broadcast. I don't know if that's part of it too. Maybe the attention, and we can talk about the newer generation, the TikTok or the whatever it may be, but the internet generation, if you will. But it does seem like I can be part of that viral moment, that moment that's going to be on TV. And if I run on the field, then maybe they'll catch me on camera. I don't know what it is, but it's been out of control the past few years.
Well, one thing's that limit the Bud Light. It's just that simple.
Coach, I've been to enough LSU games, and I am full. They just so happen to have us sitting by one of these booths. I am all for it. I would love to not smell booze seeping out of somebody's pores. 100, 360 degrees around me. That'd be wonderful. Please cut the alcohol off. I love it. So let's go ahead and take a look at Lock of the Week. And who do you like in this week's limited amount of matchups we have to pick from?
Well, you have about 6 real big championship games. And I think I'm going to go to the team that we talked about that's going to be a sleeper. And we were right, Jason's SMU. And Coach Lashley, I think, is a real good coach. He was Gus Malzone protege. You know what I mean? He came down from that family heritage, and I like SMU versus Clemson. Clemson, after that loss, I don't know if they'll get their team off the carpet, because that was a bad loss last week and against South Carolina.
I hate
now
to
the other team I like is Oregon against Penn State, and Penn State hadn't played anybody.
Yeah, Coach, you took the words out of my mouth. I think I hate to pick against the team so much as for a team, but Penn State, every time there's a big game, and since we've been doing the show, I pick against Penn State, and it hit. And my record's not great. If I was betting ponies, Coach, I'd be losing a lot of money. But that's why I don't bet. But every time I pick against Penn State, it pays off. So -3.5, Oregon. I'm going to take the Ducks, undefeated for a reason. I like this ball club a lot.
Okay, I think that's great. Next week, just I got to say too, special tribute and good luck to Coach Tim Rebowe. He announced his retirement at Nicholls State, and Coach Rebo has been a heck of a coach in high school and done a great job at Nicholls State. He really rebuilt that program, and the winningest coaching with the most wins at Nicholls State. And he announced his retirement this week, and good luck to him in his future. And also next week, we have another former player, Mason Narcisse. He's a defensive lineman that's playing at ULL, and hope that he has a chance to go to the NFL himself. So we'll have him as our guest speaker next week.
So before we go ahead and head out, let's go ahead and give you guys our social media plug. We want to make sure you follow us on Facebook at the Let's Be Frank Video Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at the LBF Podcast. So that'll do it for us. So for Justin Thomas, for head coach Frank Monica, I am Jason Duhe. And remember, let's lay ball and ton roulette with the good times roll.
Good night, guys.